Helen, thank you so much for joining me today. You've shown broad support for trans identities, and you've sort of hit anybody who is opposed to it as bigots.
Where do I say they're bigots?
On your page, you challenged her to sue you. Can you agree that a woman could feel uncomfortable with having a penis exposed to her?
I presume where this is going is that, transgender females who have a penis shouldn't be in a changing room.
For me, this is a simple logic train.
So if somebody has a body that you're not comfortable with, don't look at it. Are you saying that you don't think that transgender identities exist?
Do you think that it should be banned for people like me to publicly have our view?
When people like you have these protective views and you use a platform to spread that, it is hate. If it was my platform, I would shut it down.
Robbie Starbuck.
Robbie Starbuck.
Robbie Starbuck.
Robbie Starbuck.
Robbie Starbuck.
Robbie, I'm a big fan of what you do and your wife.
Corporate America listens to this guy. I'm a little scared of him, too.
This is the Robbie Starbuck Show.
Today we're sitting down with Dr. Helen Weberly, founder of Gender GP. If you don't know her name, you probably should. Gender GP is an online clinic that provides puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to minors, often after extremely short consultations. The clinic has operated across Europe, and now they're expanding their model into the United States. Helen herself relinquished her medical license in the UK. Her husband was accused at one point of prescribing puberty blockers to a 9-year-old after a 10-minute Skype call. And multiple countries, from Sweden to Finland to the UK, have now rolled back or shut down child transition treatments over safety concerns. So today, I plan on asking the questions that doctors, parents, policymakers, and frankly kids deserve answers to. No pre-approved talking points, no slogans, real questions, because when we're talking about kids' bodies, permanent changes, fertility, and lifelong consequences, the truth matters more than ideology, it matters more than politics, and it matters more than feelings. So here it is, my full, unedited interview with Dr. Helen Weberly. Helen, thank you so much for joining me today. I think it's important that we have these types of conversations where, we may not agree on everything, but at least we can talk to one another and actually, sort of challenge each other's views on things. To intro you to the people watching today, you've had a practice called Gender GP in the UK for about 10 years, where you guys have seen children who have gender dysphoria, and you guys have helped to begin that process for them to go through what's been referred to as a transition. And now you're coming to America. So natural question for me is, why are you guys coming to America, and what are the next steps for Gender GP?
Okay, well, thank you for having me to begin with. You focused on the children, but the Gender GP is coming to America to serve the adult population. Gender GP is everywhere. There are no barriers. But what we've done more recently is concentrate on creating a network of doctors in the States so that we can better help the US customers.
Yeah, I brought up the childhood side of things because that's where there's been, I think, the most controversy across the globe. And I know even in your case, your husband was accused of, going and prescribing
I don't want to talk about my husband.
some of these drugs to a 9-year-old. Okay, we can move on from that. But that was why I brought it in, is because that was relevant to Gender GP. But you're supportive online of trans identities in total, so you've shown broad support for trans identities, and you've sort of pit anybody who is opposed to it as bigots. I saw most lately what you said to Riley Gaines. My question is, if we're accepting of trans...
What are you quoting me there? Where do I say they're bigots?
On your page, you challenged her to sue you.
Who?
Riley Gaines.
Riley Gaines to sue me, and I called her a bigot, did I?
I believe that was the term you used, as bigot.
Okay. Well, I haven't got that in front of me, but if you're confident that was what I said to her, and
we'll put the post up on screen so people can see the post for itself and judge for themselves what you said. But my question is that how you feel about everybody who is opposed to transitioning kids? Do you feel like they're all bigots who just don't understand this, or is there some room in your mind for people to feel like, hey, maybe we need to pump the brakes here?
Well, I mean, that's two different questions, but I don't for a minute think that anybody who has a particular view is necessarily a bigot. But what I do understand very much so is that that transgender identities are real, and transgender identities have existed for many, 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 many years. But just recently, we seem to have an escalating number of people with loud voices who, for some reason, are opposed to transgender people and are even questioning their existence, which is just bizarre to me, because, you know, I don't understand what the problem is. I don't understand why it's so hard to understand that gender identity isn't necessarily the same as what your genitals are. And I find it very difficult to do that, and to understand why people have these such loud views, if you like, and also why the hate that comes with it. You know, I can understand people not understanding it because maybe they haven't met transgender people in their life, but I don't understand the viciousness and the hate towards a minority group. I find that hard to cope with.
I don't think, in my experience, I haven't seen very much hate, more of a feeling of people expressing that they feel unsafe in certain areas. Like I've seen, you know, women saying they feel
Why would
unsafe.
anyone feel unsafe with, just because somebody is transgender? Why would that make somebody feel unsafe?
So that's a good question. And if you think about Riley Gaines, okay, we'll take her in specific. She was
I don't know who Riley Gaines is.
So she was a swimmer here in the United States, and she had a situation happen. She was an NCAA swimmer, very, very, very great. And she was going to competition, and she was not told ahead of time there would be somebody who identified as transgender coming into the locker room. He exposed his penis, and
wait. You can't identify as transgender. You identify as a gender. So you either identify as male or female. So you don't identify as transgender. Transgender is an adjective. So you may be a transgender male or a transgender female, but you don't identify as transgender.
Don't non-binary people say they're transgender and they don't identify as male or female?
Transgender just means that your gender is different to what was put on your birth certificate. That's all it means. It's just an adjective.
So you're identifying as it. Yeah. So this swimmer identifies transgender. He has a penis.
This swimmer identifies as female, I think is what you're trying to say.
Yes, identifies however you want to put it. Okay.
Yeah, well, he comes in to educate the population, I think. And the correct way of saying it is that I presume this swimmer identifies as female, and they were using and she was using the female changing room. I'm guessing that's what you're saying.
Well, he has a penis, so he walks in with a penis.
She has a penis. I'm not going to discuss individual transgender people with you if you're going to misgender them, because it's frankly offensive. So if Riley is a transgender woman, then we should.
No, Riley's not. So let me walk you through it. So Riley is.
Respectfully.
I will attempt to do this in a way where you'll understand everything here. So Riley is a natural born female. Okay. Riley is a, you know, great swimmer, worked really hard through high school, gets to the collegiate level, to the top level in college. She's swimming. She goes in the locker room, is not told by NCAA officials that this person was going to be coming in. Penis gets exposed to the locker room, and Riley feels that she was mentally raped. She is a young woman.
Can we just say rape? Mentally raped. So the definition of rape is where there is unconsensual sexual intercourse where the penis enters the other person.
That's not the only way somebody can be raped. I mean, there's plenty of different ways people are charged.
That's the legal definition of rape.
Here in America, there's different ways rape is charged. You don't always have to have forcible penetration for somebody to be raped. But beyond that, mentally
raped.
Can you agree that a woman could feel uncomfortable with having a penis exposed to her when she was not consenting to have that exposed?
People get changed in changing rooms. Not everybody has what somebody else perceives as a perfect body. There are lots of body anomalies, differences, if you like. So if somebody has a body that you're not comfortable with, don't look at it. But actually, I mean, I'm presuming that this hit your news or your tabloids or whatever, your press. I'm like, just don't look. Why are they looking at someone else's genitals anyway?
Well, they're in a locker room, so it's kind of unavoidable if the person undresses next to you and it's in your face while you're sitting down,
in
right?
Your face.
So,
well, just like, come on, honestly, you know, it's just a ridiculous argument. If we're going to base like I presume where this is going is that, you know, transgender females who have a penis shouldn't be in a changing room with another female who doesn't have a penis. But the way that it's portrayed, you know, it's so the penis is so close that it's dangling in her face. Just doesn't happen, does it?
Well, I mean, I've been in locker rooms. You know, I played sports in school, and I think people get undressed. They're pretty close to one another. And especially think about this from the context of some of those females who have been in these situations in locker rooms. They are themselves rape victims where they were raped. You know, so having that previous experience, you'd have to be understanding to the fact that a woman could reasonably be afraid.
Some females have a penis. Some females have been raped. But you can't exclude all females who have been raped from a space just because they've been raped. You can't banish all females who have a penis from a space just because they have a penis. Well, it's just like, this is not humanity, is it?
One thing we won't agree on is that you know, women can have a penis. I think that that's something, you know, you were talking about the confusion, right? With
well, if you're saying that a woman can't have a penis and that we're not going to agree on that, what you're basically saying is that transgender identities don't exist, so that somebody who has a penis and testicles can't identify as a woman. And I mean, where does that come from? Where do you find that view? Because there are millions of transgender women living in the world. There's like something like in one count up to 8 million transgender people living in the US. But yet you're saying it's impossible that somebody who has a penis identifies as female. I mean, what? How come? How do you get to wipe out a whole section of the population by saying transgender identity can't be real?
You know, for me, this is a simple logic train, right? So first, if you are willing to accept this, you have to be willing to accept a lot of other things. And I want to know where that logic train ends for you. So if you're willing to accept that somebody can say, I could say that I'm a woman, and somebody has to just accept that, then if I say...
Can I just ask, so do you think that transgender identities don't exist? Is that your belief, that you can't be assigned female at birth and actually identify as male? Are you saying that literally transgender identity doesn't exist? Is that what you say?
I'll answer that, but I want to get through this logic train because I want to understand where you're at with this. So
you said that I could ask you questions.
You can, and I'll answer it. I'll answer your question.
This is a simple question. This is a yes or no question. Do you believe
absolutely
that
answer
somebody
it,
can be transgender?
I'll absolutely answer it. For us to do this, so we have to give each other time to ask the question. So I'm going to finish my question, which was, if you go down this logic train of accepting that, you know, a woman can have a penis, okay, then where do you end this logic train where, say, I could wake up and say I'm a woman and people just have to accept it? If I wake up and I say I'm transracial, I'm actually a black man trapped in a white body or in a Latino body, what is it that makes that different? What would make it different if I were to wake up and say that, you know, I identify as a lion versus a human being? Okay. I actually want to know, where do you see the delineation? How is that logic any different than saying I could wake up tomorrow and be a female?
Okay, so I'll answer this one, then you come back and answer my one. Is that fair?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so for a lion is an animal. It's not an identity. It's not a part of human nature. It's not a section of humanity. You can't identify as an animal. We are humans, animals are animals. So you can't identify as a lion. It's impossible. Black is not an identity. You don't identify as black. Black is a color of your skin. And you know, some black people come from a heritage or a culture where there are lots of black people, and it is through their genetics. But again, you don't identify as a black person. So you can't wake up in the morning and say, hey, everybody, I identify as black, because black is a color. You can't say I identify as a lion, because a lion is an animal. But gender and sexuality are two very good examples of your identity. So when you identify as a male or a female, that is an identity, and that is possible. So now, if that answers your question, would you answer mine? Are you saying that you don't think that transgender identities exist?
I 100% believe that gender dysphoria exists, and I have a lot of empathy for people who are struggling with that identity crisis, because I think that it's one that can really tear apart your soul in many different ways. So I have a lot of empathy for, the confusion that happens during that time. Now, do I believe the healthy thing to do is to tell a person that they can in fact be the other sex? I don't believe that. And here's why. Because like you described with the lion and with race, these are immutable characteristics. So to tell somebody you could change them seems patently absurd. Well, the way you see race, when you say it's a skin color, it's something that you can't change, I see this issue when it comes to transgenderism as chromosomes. It's an issue you cannot change. And there's various different, disorders that can happen. And I fully understand that. But generally, you've got XXXY. And I see that the same way you're seeing the race conversation that we just had. So when I think about, is this something that really happens? Obviously, gender dysphoria exists. You wouldn't have so many people who are confused about this. But I think that the reaction to it is where we disagree. I see it as something that is best served with talk therapy and to help get to the root of the problem. And I can give you examples. I had a girl on who was put on puberty blockers very young. She had a double mastectomy at 13. And when I asked her about, what was the process, right, to get there? What she described as a process where they never delved into the core traumas she had actually experienced. Nobody talked to her about how she could have, been abused, how she could have been mentally disturbed in different ways, and tried to get to the root causes of fixing that. And the end result is she did not actually want to transition. She went through all the way through to double mastectomy until she finally realized that she'd made a horrible mistake and she became a detransitioner. And so this is where I get to this next, sort of question is that, if we assume that neither of us know we're right, let's pretend that, okay?
No, I can't pretend that. I'm not pretending that.
I'm humble enough to pretend that maybe.
No, because no, I'm not. Well, I'm not pretending that.
Okay.
And if
well,
you
for
want
the
to
sake of
pretend
this,
because it gets new guests on your podcast, you can. But I'm not just wiping the slate clean and pretending that this doesn't.
I'm just going into fantasy land. Okay, so in fantasy land,
I don't want to go to fantasy land. I want to go to the real world.
Well, I mean, we're kind of in fantasy land when we're saying that we're going to just deny biology.
Gender dysphoria. So you believe gender dysphoria exists, but you don't believe that actually somebody can transition from the gender that everybody thought they were to begin with to the gender that they actually identify with. And you're basing it on one person who now says that they identify as female. So, but I want to bet, what about all the other people that are hurt because people go, oh, I met a detransitioner once. I met someone who made mistakes. And let's be fair, she did consent to that treatment because you don't get.
She was a child. She was a 13-year-old. So here's the question for you. Because you guys have treated children. And that's not always the case here in the US and California. Some parents have had their kids taken away from them because they were not willing to go through with the process. And then the state stepped in with doctors and allowed the care to happen. Okay. I hate even calling it care. It's not care. What happened in her case,
regardless, however old she was, whatever happened to that one patient, I'm not going to wipe clean a whole subsection of society because one person, the wrong decision was made. In medicine, I don't know in what world you live in, but in medicine, we don't base stuff on one case. We base stuff on research on many, many, many cases. And it's very, very easy for people to do the alarmist. She had the double mastectomy. It was terrible. She's now a detransitioner. And therefore, no care, and it is care, should be given to anybody. I mean, what other human discussion would give that? We've got one person who has a nut allergy and has a severe allergic reaction, so we should not let any single human eat nuts. That's what we're saying. It's ridiculous.
I don't see the logic there, to be really honest with you. But if we think about this, here's an issue that I think maybe, hopefully, you can follow me along with, okay? So their brains are not developed, these kids. So if we're talking about one case or many cases, all of these kids who go through this process, their brains are not fully developed. You agree on that, right?
What do you mean fully developed? What do you mean by fully developed? I mean, your brain is fully developed when you're born. much earlier in utero, your brain is fully developed. So what do you mean?
That's just not scientifically or medically accurate. You don't complete the process of your brain being fully developed.
When did your brain get fully developed?
Early 20s is when science and medicine agrees that the brain is fully developed in every way.
Which medicine agrees that? Sorry?
You can look across all different peer-reviewed papers on this. They all universally agree that the brain doesn't finish developing until you're in your early 20s. And that you have poor impulse control.
As a medic, I disagree with that. And it depends what development you're talking about. Do you mean the neurons are not connected? Do you mean that your personality...
I'm talking about the full development of your brain, the full development, including your ability to control impulse control and things along those lines. So I was hoping we could agree on that, but even if we can't, okay, we've got kids out there making these big decisions about their life when even some leaders in the field of what you do out there, like Marcy Bowers, admit that a large number of these kids are not going to have full sexual function to be able to orgasm when they're adults.
Why is this the one that everyone pulls out? Oh my goodness, we've got to talk about orgasm now in children. So okay, so we've done
when they're adults, not when they're kids. I'm talking about later in life. So how can a kid make that decision when they don't know?
We roll out the detransitioner and say we should deny gender-affirming care to everybody because I met a detransitioner. And then when that one doesn't work, we roll out, oh, well, one doctor said that one doctor, apparently in leaked papers, apparently whenever that happened, said that an adult wouldn't have an orgasm. Now, listen, why don't we speak to the transgender people who are alive today and ask
Marcy
them,
Bowers is transgender.
You're an adult. You had gender-affirming care when you were young. Do you have an orgasm? Because when I ask them, they're like, yeah, I love it. And I have much, much, much better sex now than I did when I had those other body parts that didn't match. So I don't understand why I'm a scientist. I don't base my opinions on one tiny case or one doctor saying one thing reportedly. It's just not the way humanity lives.
You're saying listen to somebody who's transgender, but Marcy Bowers, the person I'm quoting, is transgender, and they're the surgeon who's done the most transgender procedures of anybody in the US and is the most prominent face out there for it, and they're admitting this. So my question is, how can a child be able to make this decision when there are side effects of infertility, there are side effects of not being able to have full sexual function? You know, I've met ones who have had the double mastectomies and have nerve ending tissue issues where it results in horrific pain. There's all kinds of side effects. How can a child consent to that? I mean, they can't even conceive of what life would be like if they became a parent or not yet when they're that young.
I don't understand which children you're talking to that had all these surgeries done before they're at the age of 18, say. I mean, it's incredibly rare.
So would you say no surgeries before 18? You would agree with that?
I didn't say that. I'm asking you where you get all these children from that you're basing.
It's happening. It's happening in the US. I mean, this is not a secret. Nobody denies it in the US.
I don't know what happens in the US. I think you're wrong. But I also
no. This is an objective fact. Even people on the very far side of this would agree. Here in the US, people under 18 have had these surgeries. I have literally sat down and I have interviewed them. I've interviewed doctors.
And there will be many, many more people who would benefit from having that surgery that are being denied it because people like you are pulling out the odd case of regret. And so, does denying care cause harm? Absolutely, it does. And the thing is, you never get you're very. People with your kind of views are very happy to have the detransitioner on because it's gonna get clicks and everyone's going to go.
I'm having you on too, and to be very clear.
Why don't we have some transgender adults who are having sex once a week or however often they do and say, do you have good sex? Do you have orgasms? Are you pleased? What about your nipple function? How's your nipple function? Is it good? Because, if you have an operation on your chest, whether it's breast enhancement or reduction or mastectomy, there is a risk that you're going to get nipple dysfunction. It's a risk of that surgery. But then ask transgender guys, are you happy that you had the surgery? Even though your nipples aren't quite as sensitive as they were, are you happy? And by far the majority will go, oh my God, I am so happy. But you never get those guys on.
I'd say here's the issue, right? Are you able to find people who will say they're happy with it? You sure can, and I don't hide that. And I think, yes, I will bring somebody on who's a detransitioner. I'm also bringing you on, and I'm not going to chop up what you say. We're going to put it out there in its entirety for people to judge. And I think that's the fair way to do things. And I'm a big believer in having these exchanges because I think, I'm not always going to be right about everything. I believe what I believe very strongly, but I think people are entitled to hear.
But does it matter that what you believe and what you say actually hurts people? Transgender people.
I don't believe that.
Who are transgender, who may also have gender dysphoria, and who are trying to access care but are being blocked because people listen to your views because they're quite loud and they're spread widely. Do you care that hurts people?
I don't believe that it does hurt people. And here's the thing I would tell them. I learned a long time ago that you need to be in control of your emotions.
It really does.
I have emotional regulation. So I don't allow other people, I'm an adult, I don't allow other people to affect my emotions. If they do, it's because I've decided they are allowed to have that power. So if somebody's saying I have the power to hurt them, they would really need to soul search why they're allowing somebody that they don't know to have that kind of power, because that's something that is really a you problem. If that was happening in my life, I would soul search myself and I'd figure out how I regain
really
emotional
owning the
control.
problem. I think you understand what I mean. I think you understand that your views, and you're entitled to your views, but you publish your views very widely and very loudly, and then allow people to comment and join the discussion. And people respect your views. So you have a responsibility to use your views, either privately or very, very publicly. And the comments and the fallout from your views, which are yours, hurts people. And so you can say, oh goodness, well, you shouldn't allow yourself to be hurt. But it does hurt. And I just want to say that you do hurt people.
Well, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and
Are they entitled to their opinion when it causes hurt to a whole community of people?
Do you think that it should be banned for people like me to publicly have our view?
I think minority groups are protected. I think, and in the UK, certainly, gender reassignment is a protected characteristic. And that means that it's protected from bias and discrimination and hate crimes, because we know that when people have views that are against a whole group or minority of people, it causes harm, it causes pain, it causes suffering, and I think that's really unkind. So you are allowed your views, but when you use a platform to make them very loud and very encouraging to others, then that's when it becomes problematic.
Don't you think, if you look back at history, I can't think of a time where somebody who wanted to shut down an opposing view was the good guy. Like, can you point me to that in history? Because I've been told this by a number of different people who are on the other side of this, that essentially they believe that I shouldn't be able to have these views, that it should be shut down, that platforms should kick me off, that there should be government action by the EU or others to shut down anybody who thinks like this. So I want your take on that. Is that something you actually believe? I'll give you
my take. I mean, in the war, the transgender people were lined up with the Jewish people and the unclean, as the tragedy was, and they were exterminated, and that was a horrible thing to do to people who were not beautiful and blue-eyed and blonde and non-Jewish and non-gay and non-disabled and non-transgender, that ethnic cleansing type thing, and that's people who are protected against that kind of hate. And when people like you have these protective views and you use a platform to spread that it is hate, or a view that says that transgender people don't exist, transgender people shouldn't be allowed to access care. You don't even call it care. You don't call it caring for a transgender person. I don't know what you do call it. I think that if it was my platform, I would shut it down. And that's why I come here today to talk to you, to show people that these views are not kind. They have consequences. They are hurtful and they are hateful against a whole community.
I'm glad you got that all off your chest. I think, I'm more interested in working the logic side of this because I'm trying to understand you. I really am. I'm trying to understand if you're willing to see the other side of this. And it sounds more like you want the other side of this shut down and that you believe there's only one way.
Which is the other side? Sorry.
The other side is one that says, hey, pump the brakes on this, and that kids don't have the ability to consent to these types of procedures before they have a fully developed brain. I mean, we don't let kids go out and get tattoos under 18. So why are we letting them do this? They don't even understand algebra, and we're telling parents your child's fully capable of making this lifelong decision where they could potentially be left infertile. They could potentially be left in a situation where sexual function is lost. They could have a host of different side effects, bone density issues. I mean, how can a child consent to that when they don't even know algebra?
No, I don't know what algebra's got to do with it, but what we do in medicine, okay, in the science world, is what you do with any treatment. So you get a sample of patients, for example, 100 patients, yeah, and you give them a treatment that's been recognised and developed for a particular condition, and you see what happens to those 100 patients. Now, if all the 100 patients said, I'm unhappy, I'm infertile, I can't orgasm, I've got no nipple function, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, then we would be like, oh, we've done this wrong. But actually, if you look at the research and you look at the 100 people who were given puberty blockers and gender-affirming hormones, the overwhelming research and outcome is that they are happier, better off. They enjoy their bodies more, and that's the numbers you have to go on. So I admire you for being concerned for somebody else's fertility and their sexual function, but I don't think that your concern for them should override the medical research.
Well, that's not the entirety of the medical research, though. I mean, you look at the Cass review and other countries that are deeply researching this, and the bodies of evidence they're looking at, they're not just looking at one study, they're looking at all of them, and they're putting it all together, and they're saying, what are the outcomes we're seeing? And the result is many European countries are outright banning or severely limiting this. And then here in the US, states are completely banning it for children. I mean, that's been the case here in the state where I am in Tennessee. It's completely banned for kids. No hormones, no puberty blockers, no surgeries. This is where the world is going as more and more science comes out that is studying the issue. Doesn't that give you some concern, some pause when you see that as more science comes out, more countries keep limiting it?
What I see as an enormous concern is that there are people who want to listen to Dr. Cass, right? I'm just going to give you a brief overview of Dr. Cass. Dr. Cass is not somebody who has ever managed transgender children or adults. She's a respiratory pediatrician, so she manages lung problems. And yet she, for one person, was called to do a review on transgender services, which is a little bit surprising. It's like you wouldn't we have two charities in the UK. We have one that protects birds and we have one that protects animals. We wouldn't ask the bird charity to give opinions on how we manage animals. We would ask the animal charity. Do you understand my point? And then we have somewhere,
I mean, hold on, if we pause there for a second, you wouldn't want somebody who has a financial sort of tie into the business of transgenderism to be the one studying this. You would take somebody who's a professional in the field of medicine and you would have them study it independently. So I think that's what the intention was, is have somebody independently study it.
In medicine, if you were reviewing a cardiology, a heart procedure, you wouldn't ask the brain surgeons to carry out the review. You would ask the cardiologists to carry out the review. And just because this is transgender medicine, it shouldn't be any different. But what happened, and nobody really knows why, but Dr. Cass was put forward as the only applicant and the successful applicant to do this review. I'm not going to speculate why, but you can probably imagine why I'm speculating. But actually the WPATH, which was over 200 gender experts, and they did a whole review of all the literature in the same way that Dr. Cass purported to, and they came out with a different outcome. So if I had a transgender child, and I don't, I would be thinking, do I want the opinions of the review of one doctor who wasn't a gender specialist, or would I rather have the reviews of 200 gender specialists reviewing all the research? And I know which one I choose because I will go with the evidence.
I mean, so here's how that kind of works out. Here in the US, there was a big story in the New York Times about something sort of similar to the Cass review, where they were studying all of this stuff, and somebody who was pro-trans rights was behind that, right? And what ended up happening is, behind the scenes, the numbers they were seeing were not in alignment with the ideological views they had and wanted. So they were trying to hide this review. That was a big story. It was a bombshell here that essentially science was being hidden because the predetermined outcome they were hoping for was not what they were getting. And so I think your normal sort of person out there, if you ask them, would it be appropriate to take a group of people who all receive a financial benefit and ask them to essentially investigate themselves? Is that a good idea? Your average person would say, no, you need somebody from outside there to give a clean, unbiased, eagle-eye view look at it and to decide, is this actually on the up and up?
I don't think Dr. Cass's outcome was eagle-eyed or unbiased.
Please explain that, because I want people to have the full view. What was biased?
It's been picked up, as you have highlighted, in the UK, in Europe, and now in states of America. And as a result of that, children are being denied care. Now, what happens to those children? We know what happens to children who are denied care. It causes harm. It causes lifelong body changes that could have been prevented, and it causes severe mental health deterioration because they know there is care available, and yet somebody else has banned it for them. So even though the research supports that it improves mental health, functioning, life satisfaction scores, longevity.
I want to understand completely, make sure we're on the same page. Are you saying that Dr. Cass's report leads to kids committing suicide?
I don't want to make that association because that's too strong. But what we do know is that children who are denied care, their mental health suffers, and the worst outcome from suffering mental health is suicide. And that is when children are denied care.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If let's say 13-year-old says that they want gender affirming care, but the gender affirming care in their mind is a Brazilian butt lift because they watch YouTube all the time and their favorite singer has a Brazilian butt lift. No, this is a real question. This is a real question. So
you're talking about a 13-year-old transgender child comes to the gender clinic and says, I want a Brazilian butt lift. Is that really what
where do you draw the line is what I'm saying on procedures to give, quote, gender affirming care, right? Because conceivably,
you're doing that alarmist. Oh my God.
No, it's not alarmist. If somebody has body dysmorphia, I mean, there's people out there who say they don't feel their true self unless they were to get a limb amputated. There are people out there that is a real mental condition. So why is that any less real? Why is that something we should take less seriously than somebody saying, I should be...
get to take it seriously? What gives you the right to take this seriously or not? And then champagne it from your on your platform. What position is it that you hold that gives you the right to decide what happens inside a gender clinic with a transgender child and their family?
Millions of people have entrusted me to stand up for what they believe is right, and so that's what I do. And that's
or millions of people will view your views and if you get the detransitioner and you do it together, I bet you make a very compelling argument. But that's a bit different from millions of people trust Robbie to expose this, to make sure no transgender child ever gets any further gender affirming care. I'm like, whoa, I don't know who elected you in that position.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Here in Tennessee, my views were widely popular and were a large reason why they banned these procedures. So
really?
Clearly,
you're responsible for it.
Clearly, there was.
You're responsible for the care being banned in Tennessee. Well, I tell you what, Robbie, when you look back on your life in a couple of decades to come, I really hope that you're not proud of it because you will have caused a lot of harm if that is your responsibility.
I believe that we will have saved a lot of children.
I feel very sad for the children, the transgender children in Tennessee, if it was you that managed to get this care withdrawn or prohibited. Very sad for them.
I feel we're going to save a lot of kids and allow them to develop to adulthood and make their adult choices when they have
where is it that you get to make that opinion though? Because like you're not a doctor.
I mean, you get to make the argument. I get to make the argument. You know, I think generally in the world, people are over the sort of institutional. I'm bestowed a right by having a diploma. That's not how you're bestowed the right to speech and to have an opinion. Speech and opinions are decided in this battlefield out here of ideas, and people decide what sounds more reasonable to them. And right now,
why are the people deciding what medical care?
Who should decide? Why should people not have a say in what happens in their society? Societies are built on incentives. If you have an incentive system that is structured to say that essentially the voices of the people don't matter, and actually only these people who get a piece of paper from a university are the ones who are allowed to have opinions, you're going to have a revolution on your hands. You have to listen to people in a functioning society. It has to happen.
We need to listen to the people who are living the experience every day. We have to listen to the transgender people, not the non-transgender people. We need to listen to what the transgender people want. And the millions of transgender people out there are saying, please, can you stop interfering with the care that we want, that we know, that research supports, that will make our lives better.
So do we need to listen to a 45-year-old male?
Trusting you to support the banning of that care for somebody else, a different group of people, not even your own people.
Helen, do we need to listen to a 45-year-old male who says he's actually a 6-year-old and says he's trans age? Do we need to listen to him?
Sorry, what was this one now? A 46-year-old who says he's a 6-year-old. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he says he's trans age. This is, again, another real mental condition.
Trans age.
It's a real mental condition. There's people who believe this, and they dress up in diapers. Do you believe they need to be?
You know, and the black. And now we're doing we're doing a number.
Just answer the question. It's not a difficult one. If you're actually straight on this logic, if we go down the same logic train you're on, then you have to believe that person having that experience, and you have to treat them as such, or you're causing harm. Because that person says if you do not treat them as a 6-year-old, you're causing them harm.
Asking you whether or not they would be allowed to have treatment for their age identity. Is that what you're trying to get me to?
They want to be legally recognized as that, because they believe that they are that age, and they think that if you do not affirm that, you are causing them harm. So do you affirm that person?
Where have you got this one from?
Groups of people.
I've never had this one.
There are groups of people who would like. There are groups of people who would like to pretend they're children. They literally dress up in diapers. Okay, these are sick people in my mind, people who are very mentally ill. And on your train of logic of saying we need to listen to the people having the experience, that would mean that I need to listen to that person.
And they need to be in the hands of mental health practitioners.
How is that different?
And transgender people are not mentally ill. So we're not doing a direct comparison here of your fictitious 46-year-old who identifies as 6. We're talking about transgender people who identify with a different gender to the sex that they were assigned at birth.
They're both identifying as something they can't
biologically be. You put on their birth certificate male, and it ended up being wrong. They were actually female. It's not hard.
They're both identifying as something that they can't biologically be, nor were they biologically born as, because you can't change your chromosomes. That's not scientifically possible. You're not born as
5 or 46. 6 or 46 is a number.
You have a biological age. Everybody does. Everybody has a biological age.
It's the number of years you've been alive. It's a number of years. It's not biological. It's nothing to do with biology. It's
actually, there's two things. There is the number of years you've been alive, and then there's a biological age that's measured by taking blood, and you're able to measure a bunch of different components and figure out what your biological age is. It's an emerging science, but beyond that, your normal, rational person.
Now listen, we could talk about that one because there's a lot of money in that. Because what they're going to sell you next is how to give you medicines and well.
No, I agree with you. I actually think it's total bullshit.
To make their biological age less, and so you can live
Trust
longer.
me, I agree with you. We would agree with each other on that.
But that's not the same as transgender identities. And you can't, I'm not comparing them. You're comparing pineapples to turnips.
I see them mentally as the same thing. And so
gives you the right to see them mentally?
Well, I'm asking you, how am I wrong? Please explain that to me. Explain to me in the best argument you possibly have how those two things are different, because they both have impossibilities tied to them. In the case of the person born male saying that they're female, they have chromosomes that you can't change.
So they weren't born male. They were born.
What is a male? What is a woman? What is a male? Can you explain that?
Do you want this cheap one again?
No, it's not a cheap one. I actually am wondering. I want to know, how do you define these to have terms that we all can agree on? Because it has to be a term everybody can agree on.
Do you not know what a woman is?
I'm very clear on what a woman is. There's a natural born female.
And so am I. And your gender identity is whether you're a woman or a man, right? But your chromosomes are little tiny things that you can't see that are in every single cell of your body. Nothing to do with your gender identity at all. It just so happens that the majority of people who identify as female happen to have XX. However, some have XO, XXY, XY.
And those are called chromosome disorders.
You know, it's a difference. It's
medically, those are called disorders. When somebody doesn't have XX or XY, they're defined medically as chromosome disorders. You know that, and it's very, very rare. That's how they're referred to.
Are you saying that so people with Down syndrome have disorders?
It's referred to medically as such. That's what it's referred to. I'm not saying that I think they're disordered.
It's really old language. We don't pathologize people like that anymore. We don't say you have a disorder or a disease. We don't do it.
Most chromosome disorders, you would not be able to tell the person doesn't have XX or XY. You would see them in assignment with the sex that they are. And so each one of them,
somebody doesn't.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, so, but medically in literature, it'd be referred to as a chromosome disorder. And that's how it's been referred to.
We don't use terminology like that anymore.
Maybe it's different in the UK, but that's what the literature here says. It defines it as a chromosome disorder. And it's kind of one of those things that, like, I mean, who cares what you call it?
Then transgender people have a chromosome disorder.
And what about gametes? Do gametes not play a role in this? You know, is that gametes? Do they not play a role in defining sex?
They have a huge role, yeah. Well, that's where your chromosomes come from.
So if gametes, if we can agree they play a role, then how do you think you can go from one sex to another and actually biologically change?
When you say what do you mean? Biologically change? Are you saying that you're changing your chromosomes from XX to XY?
They say trans men are real men. You've said this. Trans men are men. Trans women are women. That's something that you believe. If you believe that, then biologically you believe that they are that thing. So how do you deal with gametes?
Biological is different. Biology is like body parts. It's chromosomes. It's cells. It's the blood tests you were talking about.
What makes up whether we're men and women?
How much sodium you have in your body. That's biology. How your lungs work, how your intestines digest your food. That's biology. It's nothing to do with the person, their identity.
I mean, it only makes up every part of them.
It's what, sorry?
It makes up every part of them.
Yeah,
you know, like it is what makes you.
Everybody's the same, Robbie, are they? And I don't think, you know.
No, they're not, but they have commonalities. So males and females have commonalities, and they're very different from one another. Like, one of the things that's driven me crazy that I honestly think has actually hurt your side's argument is this sort of like denial of reality that men and women are different and that we have distinct biological advantages as males that females don't have, and women have different things with their bodies that we don't have. That's something that your average person sees, and the constant denial of that by people who are pro-transitioning has kind of driven a lot of normal people to say, you know what, this side over here sounds more rational.
Alert.
Like average people who are not super into this whole thing. They're just an average person out in society. They don't get too deep into this. They hear the two sides, the two different opinions. And when they hear somebody denying something that plainly we can all see, that like, look, I'm 6'2", I'm a bigger guy. I have distinct physical advantages over almost every female on the planet. Okay, there's very few.
Listen to you.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that there's these distinct advantages biologically that we just can't deny, right? Like, and when we deny it, we're not doing anything kind to anybody else.
What's it got to do with this? So you're 6'2", you're very tall, you're very strong.
If I identify, thank you. Thank you for calling me handsome. I appreciate that. No, but if you think about this, if we're willing to admit I have biological advantages, I should be nowhere near playing women's sports. If I wake up tomorrow and say I feel, I know, but if I say I feel like a woman,
you might be more in my camp, but you don't play women's sports.
If I wake up tomorrow and I say that I am one and I go sign up,
you're gonna wake up tomorrow, Robbie, and say because transgender people
I would agree. I would agree with you on that. I'm probably not going to. But I mean, look at Caitlyn Jenner, right? Caitlyn Jenner has said the same thing, that essentially it's not fair to have these.
You're going to bring out the 13-year-old detransitioner. You're going to bring out Caitlyn Jenner. You're going to make up somebody who wakes up tomorrow and wants a 13 and goes to the doctor and says, I want a Brazilian butt lift or whatever it was you called it. Why can't we just talk about transgender people in general, right?
Can you give me an example?
Don't have success in they are disadvantaged because of society's attitude towards them, which is promoted by programs like this and your millions of viewers. They are disadvantaged. They're disadvantaged in relationships, in education, in job opportunities. Why aren't we debating that? Why aren't we debating how better to help people to enter education, get good jobs, win medals at sport?
We can agree on a number of things.
Because I'm much bigger than them.
We can agree on a number of things here. We should absolutely be providing better education to people. I think we would disagree on what that is. I think that we can both agree that people should be treated fairly. I think we have different ideas of what that looks like, though. And I think in general,
your views are, oh golly, it doesn't matter that trans people have are not treated fairly, or they don't have access to education because their lives are really quite tricky because of
how do they not? Can you explain that? How do they not have access to education? Because the way that I see it here in the American public school system, it bends over backwards to try to please people who have this identity while telling others who are opposed to it that they're bigots.
So they do. Well, that's good. I'm glad. I'm really, if your country really does do that, then I'm, hats off to your education system. If they really are singling out students that find school difficult because they're different, because they have an anomaly, because they have a chromosome disorder, as you call it, then my hat off to your education system.
Very few of people who identify as transgender have a core chromosome disorder.
Transgender. You identify as male or female, or non-binary.
However you want to say it. They say here all the time, people who say they're transgender, they say they identify as transgender. That happens all the time. So I'm using terminology that I hear from these people.
Okay, that's fine, but I'll just...
Here in the US, if you look at the school systems where this is happening the most, where it's championed, like in Davis, California, what happens is there is a pocket of kids, a hotbed of them identifying as either non-binary or transgender. That looks a lot like a social contagion.
I get it.
When you look at other areas. So how do you explain that?
Gender identities, then all of a sudden, the safety of that acceptance suddenly makes everyone trans. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that there's very clear signs of a social contagion, and this has been covered widely, even in papers like the New York Times, where they have essentially, had to concede this ground that there are these pockets that don't make sense. If you look, even in very liberal cities where there's certainly not these anti-trans, bigots, as some of these people would refer to, right? These are people who generally have voted in alignment with these policies. There's some school systems that are not as, openly celebratory as others, but they're perfectly, quote, accepting in your view, and you don't see the same numbers. You see pockets of explosion that are built around social dynamics. So clearly, when I look at that, I say it is irresponsible to treat these kids and to give them lifelong
It's not cool, right? It's
treatments.
not cool. It's not easy. It's very difficult. Your gender identity is splashed across the newspapers. It's debated by people who have nothing to do with them at all. People like you and your platform. Being transgender is not a cool thing to be. And yet,
From
all of a sudden,
2020 to 2024, it was.
Trans people, then everyone's going to do it. It's like saying, oh my God, if I go to the gay bar tonight, is that going to turn me gay? It doesn't. We know that.
No, I think if you're walking in the door there, you probably have some, ideas about what you like or not, right? But if you do look at America,
places to go.
I'm not an expert on that, so I can't. I'm gonna have to trust you on that one because I'm not an expert on it. But if you look back in time, right, 2020
I think you'd be welcome there, though. I think the gay guys would enjoy you there. 2020
to 2024. I will say the log cabin Republicans, who are the gay Republicans, they seem to like my show and stuff, and they tend to agree with me on this issue, by the way. And so
I'm not sure it's your show that would go well in the gay club. I think it would be other attributes, but anyway.
So again, I appreciate you calling me handsome. It's very nice of you, but 2020 to 2024, it was actually seen as a cool thing in many American schools and American cities. After this election, that has changed dynamically. Young people trended right voting in a way that we haven't seen in my lifetime, and they're increasingly going that direction to the political right. And as you look at this now, what happened is as the social dynamic changed, they measured this at university and they found that the identification at some of these universities of being transgender or non-binary fell by almost half, okay, in 1 year. That tells you there's a social.
Why does it bother you whether those students?
Well, that doesn't bother me. I'm quite happy that the social dynamic is changing and that people don't feel a social, incentive to do this. And I think that brings numbers down to.
What incentive what benefits did they have when they pretended to be trans?
The social incentive from 2020 to 2024 was they were getting increased attention. They were getting a focus and spotlight put on them. And in many cases, a lot of these kids sadly had contributing factors to go along with it where they had autism, right? So they're fixated on something. And you've seen experts in autism talk about this.
And now you're saying it's because it was autism. Wait, which one was it?
These autistic kids are more prone to falling into a social contagion.
We started on this.
These two things are connected. They're connected.
Social contagion.
They're connected.
And then they would change their minds.
Many different types of autistic kids are more prone to a social contagion because of the fixations that they can have on what different people think are
autistic,
cool.
and then they were socially contaged, and then they turned trans, and then they decided they weren't trans. But like what, like the bollocks.
No, I think you're trying to take a bunch of leaps that aren't there. In reality, this is very clear. I think to especially Americans who have lived.
But that's the journey you just took me on.
No, I'm saying these things all exist as different components of something that built up into something that was definitely different from historical norms, okay? We didn't have anywhere near this number of young people identifying and saying that they were this other thing. And now that's changing again because the social dynamic has changed. And I don't think it's a coincidence that these changes happened as the pattern of what society...
Why is it so bothering to you? Like, these are other people. They're other people's lives.
Because people are being hurt.
You so much.
It's as simple as that. People are being hurt.
Millions of followers will love your views, and you'll get more clicks. Well, I don't understand. What's your beef? Why do you bother about where was the school?
Because innocent people are being hurt, and not enough people are standing up to protect them. I have daughters myself, and I want their spaces protected. I want them to feel safe when they're in a locker room. I want them to feel safe in a bathroom.
Are you one of those that are going to bring your daughters up to be scared of men?
I think that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy in private spaces for your private body.
I do think your daughter should be scared of men a bit, or being in the same space as a man without someone to protect them. Is that how you bring your daughters up? I don't bring my daughter up like that.
I have brought my daughters up. Here, I'll answer your question. I'm bringing up my daughters to have a reasonable understanding of what a male is capable of in a setting where you are vulnerable. So if my daughter's in a vulnerable space in a locker room and there's somebody with a penis in there, a man, they're capable of doing something. This has happened in American schools where girls were raped by a guy with a penis who went in there and said they were trans. You're talking about somebody who was raped. In Virginia schools, this happened multiple times where they allowed a boy to go in there and he raped these girls by saying that he was trans, and that's how he was allowed in that space to be able to take advantage and rape that girl. That's horrific.
Do you say to your daughters, be careful if you are in a space with a male on their own, because that male might rape you? Is that the kind of message you give?
I mean,
or do we just say to people, and it doesn't have to be girls, it's anybody, because don't forget, boys get raped too. And that's the sad fact of life. Or
girls are disproportionately raped.
Don't go in a dark alley. Don't go somewhere where people can't see you, where you can't call for help if something bad was to happen. But we don't say to people, don't go near someone with
the conversation is protect yourself from vulnerable situations, right? Yeah. And vulnerable situations can look like girls have been raped in the locker room. So how can you say it's not a vulnerable situation?
Girls and boys have been raped everywhere. Okay.
We're talking about girls right now, though, and they face disproportionate numbers of rapes. Okay, so yes, boys are raped too. We're focusing on girls right now. I have daughters and sons.
I'm not singling out the girls.
I have daughters and sons. I'm singling it out because it happens more often. That's why. And here's the truth. By the way, I don't care. Here's the thing. I don't care if a female who identifies as male comes into the male bathroom. They pose no threat to me. Okay? That's why I'm focusing on girls and men who identify as trans. If a girl who identifies as male wants to go in the male bathroom, I honestly don't care because they pose no threat.
I don't want to go in the male bathroom.
Females
go in the male bathroom, thanks.
No, I'm saying if they're a girl who identifies as a male.
I beg your pardon.
So
okay. So trans males, you mean?
I don't care if they're in the bathroom with me. They pose no threat to me. They pose no threat to me at all. So again, that goes back to the distinct biological advantages.
So strong, and you can overwhelm them, and that's really cool and amazing.
No, it's a very clear, easy biological fact that people can understand that men aren't generally afraid of that. Okay, so we're fine. I honestly don't care. I mean, send them in there. Okay, maybe that's actually the answer to the whole thing is just send them all in there because men are not seeing this as a threat, right? The focus is on females because they're the ones who are physically threatened. They're the ones who have been raped in these situations.
This image that we're creating, that we women fought for years to be treated as equals, and now we've got this narrative that we've got men superseding them. I'm not scared of men. So, and if somebody who has a penis comes into my locker room, I don't think you're going to rape me. But I tell you what, I don't go in dark alleys at night time, and I don't go into car parks on my own when there's no people around. That's what we should be teaching our daughters.
That's smart, but it's also smart not to be in a room where you're vulnerable and naked and there's somebody with a penis in the room. Because guess what? You always have a higher % chance of being raped if there is somebody naked in the same room you're naked and they are the opposing sex.
The majority of rapes happen in the home. in the home.
Again,
and you
this
don't
is
have a guardian
irrelevant
there.
to the
You
conversation.
You have someone with an orifice and someone with something that they can rate.
This is irrelevant to the situation we're talking about. There are disproportionate numbers you can point out in a bunch of different ways, but if you're exposing people to harm, we're talking about this specific harm and why it's an issue. So, you know, I think women are fully entitled to feel like it is not safe. And that they just don't plain want to be exposed to somebody's penis. You know, you're talking about many girls who are in this situation who have never seen a penis.
You're not going to win me over with transgender people who have a penis, who go into a female changing room, are to be seen as somebody as a threat because they have a body part that's different. And actually, you just told me a minute ago that they've got no sexual function anyway. And fertility's
Again, that's not what I said. I said that there are a large number.
Actually,
I said that there are a large number that can, and it's specifically about Tanner stage 2. If they're given treatment during Tanner stage 2,
you're a puberty expert now.
If they're given the treatment, no, I'm actually talking, these are the words of Marcy Bauer, who is with WPATH, by the way, is a transgender surgeon who identifies as trans, and they've done a bunch of these surgeries, okay? So I'm not using my words. This isn't speculative on my part. This is that person from the very organization that you touted as an expert organization who has admitted that there is a loss of sexual function and ability to orgasm as adults in that group.
If they've got no sexual function, they're not going to get an erection. They can't do rape.
That's not true. There's AGP people.
Safer.
That's not true. There's people who have sexual disorders where they are sexually aroused by the idea of being a woman and dressing up as one and being in the space with other women. There's all kinds of different sexual proclivities that are out there and weird and result in these weird situations. And not everybody gets treatment in Tanner stage 2.
It's a transgender woman who has a sexual fetish that she gets off on being in a changing room with other women.
You're acting like this is crazy, but anybody can look this up. They're all over the internet. Anybody who's been on social media has seen these people. They're all over the place.
Social media,
they're probably the worst representatives you could possibly ever ask for.
Social media, come on.
It's reality. These people exist. You can't go through life pretending that they don't exist.
TikTok.
These are real people. They exist. Women have experienced these things.
I'll tell you the real people who exist. The real people, before we wind up, are the transgender community who suffer greatly from views like yours that are projected wildly, that portray them as dangerous people who rape women, who have sexual dysfunction, who have fetishes growing as fancying being in the same space as a woman with their penis hanging out. Honestly, those are the people that are hurt, and that's reality.
Have you ever in your practice come across a child that you would not transition because you felt that it was not appropriate, that they were mentally not of sound mind?
Well, you would never, mentally not of sound mind. If someone has a severe mental illness.
One case, have you come across one where you said, no, we're not going to give you transition drugs because there's a mental issue here and we're going to treat that instead? Or do you always affirm?
No, you treat every single patient differently. Have I had patients in when I was practicing as a doctor in the UK? Have I had patients that I've said, listen, let's do a little bit more work, explore a little bit more. Let's find out what the best thing for you. Many, because that's the right way to doctor.
Did you end up giving drugs to all of them, or did some of them not transition?
No, but the majority of people who come are transgender people who didn't wake up yesterday wanting a Brazilian butt lift. They identified as transgender for many, many years and now are taking steps to transition. It's really very simple.
Tell me this, you're coming to America.
Care saves lives.
You're coming to America. What does the process look like? What do you think is a reasonable process that is enough time for you to investigate as a doctor, for doctors to investigate these issues and to decide to prescribe the drugs?
What time, Dr. John? Seconds, minutes, hours? These people have been you know, you've heard of coming out, right? You come out of the closet, come out of hiding, yeah. But before you come out, you come in. You spend years exploring your identity, wondering how it's going to affect you, wondering if you take those steps, is society going to accept you, or are you going to be considered as how you describe transgender women as a danger and a fetish and what have you, which is so damaging. These are real people. And actually the best person to understand their own identity is that person themselves, not you, not me. My job as a doctor is simply to help them make the right decision and live their best life without harm, and also how to protect their mental health from people like you.
Do you think parents should have a say?
Parents should all, I mean, hopefully we've got supportive parents who do good parenting and don't teach their children that men are a danger. But anyway, I think parents, of course, parents have a role. Parents have a role in absolutely everything. Not all parents are fantastic parents, and some kids don't get that.
So if a parent says, let me ask you this, because this has been a contentious subject. If a parent says, they have a daughter who says they identify as transgender, they want to be a male, and they say,
if they have a transgender son, you're going to lose me with your twisted language.
Just try to follow along, because I may not have the perfect language in your mind, but I'm trying to get you to answer a very clear scenario, right? Because I want to understand what the mindset is in terms of parents and their role. So if that situation happens and they say, Cindy, we love you, we don't want you to be distressed about your gender identity, they understand that there's confusion going on, we want to get you talk therapy, but we're not going to refer to you as he, him, we are not going to give you a different name, we're not going to move into this process of getting puberty blockers and all that, we believe that therapy is the best route. Do you believe that those parents should suffer adverse action, that they should have their child taken, that the state should take over and give that child more treatment?
I don't think the state should take children away unless they are at a danger, and some children are at a danger from their parents. But that's quite an extreme.
Do you agree that no, that's not extreme. Actually, that's actually the normal response.
The bit that bothers me more is the first bit, not the taken away by the state, but the first bit when you've got your child coming to you and saying, "Dad, I've got something to tell you. You may not like it, you may not understand it, but I need you to help me with this." And I know that you thought that you had a daughter, but actually I'm a male. Now that first interaction, that first response from those parents is crucial, because what you're saying is the scenario you gave me is where they're saying, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're a girl. And then you're denying that child.
They gave a very loving response. I love you. God didn't make any mistakes on you. You're perfect. You're perfect the way you are. And I want to get you the therapy that clearly you need to, be given so that you have time and space to talk about this. If there are mums and dads out there listening to this, right, who have children who are saying to them, please, will you listen to me? Because I'm trying to tell you that I'm transgender. Please, will you listen to me and help me with this? And if there are parents listening to this, trust me, please support your child. Okay, this isn't a mental illness. Don't stick them into the conversion therapy to say, no, don't. Wait, wait, hold up. How can we call this conversion therapy?
That's what you just saw. You told me. Well, you gave me the best definition of conversion therapy there is. You said she says she wants to turn into a boy, and the parent says, no, I'll take you to therapy for your mental illness. That's what you told. That's what you said.
And you think that's conversion therapy? Okay, conversion therapy to me sounds like, yes, Cindy, I know you were born a girl, but I'm going to tell you that your delusion you can be a male is totally real, and I'm going to try to help convert you to be a male. I think gender affirming care is telling Cindy there was no mistake made on her, that she's perfect the way she is, and that we want to help her get to a place where she sees how wonderful she is the same way we do.
Do you remember we used to do it with gay children and say, Dad.
You don't understand. With gay children, what they were saying is, we're going to, no. If you're starting from square one and you say somebody's gay and you say you want to change them to straight, then you're describing a conversion, right? If you have somebody who is a biological female and they say they want to be a male and you change them, you are describing a conversion. That's conversion therapy. What you're doing, gender affirming care, okay, we can wind up, but gender affirming care is telling that child that there is nothing wrong with them, that they are wonderful, that they are perfectly made, and that you're going to help them get to a place where they can see that. That is gender affirming care.
Okay, Dr. Starbuck, gender specialist specializing in gender affirming care. That's your view, and it's very harmful.
As we wrap up, tell me this. In America, what is your goal? Why are you coming here? When the mood of Americans is one that is trending increasingly towards saying this is dangerous, this is wicked, it's evil, it's mutilating kids.
I'm not talking to those Americans. I'm not coming over for those.
Well, those Americans write the laws. So, I mean, I would probably try to figure out a coherent argument.
That's exactly my point, because you don't get transgender people in high positions because of the difficulties that they face in life.
Well, no,
and
that's because the populace recognizes the mental illness and they don't want to elect somebody who is disordered and has a mental illness.
The International Classification of Diseases, that the World Health Organization 11 has declassified it. It's not a mental illness.
The World Health Organization also told us that that COVID was totally natural, and they also told us we needed to stay 6 feet away from each other, mask ourselves, and keep ourselves inside. So we were,
a whole new
sequestered away from the dangerous oxygen. Okay, so I think the WHO is probably a bad group to use as your expert. Okay,
it's all we've got. And they have classified it as not a mental illness. So, Dr. Starbuck, you can be classified as a mental illness.
I'm very happy the mentally ill people at the WHO say that it's not mental illness, because that probably just further affirms my point that it is. And so, what is your goal here?
No, I think I need to wrap up.
This is last question. What is your goal in America?
The last one was the last question.
No, well, you didn't answer it, which was, what is your goal in America? What do you want to do?
I want to
does
make
success look
gender affirming care accessible to as many transgender people who want to access it.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Helen. I think that what you're doing is wicked. I think it's honestly like barbaric on the same level.
20 years' time.
I think it's on the same level as child sacrifice. And I think that humanity is going to look back on it the way we look at child sacrifice. And I think people like you are going to look like absolute villains. I really do. I will pray for you, though. I will pray for you because, Helen, I believe that nobody is too far gone to be saved. And so I will pray for you, because what I have just heard throughout this interview can only be described as deep wickedness. So I wish you well. And I'll be surprised if Gender GP is actually able to get off the ground in America, because I don't think our lawmakers are going to take kindly to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me on.
So there you have it. A medical model that denies long-term safety data, so-called treatments that are so irreversible, European nations are even banning or severely restricting them. A treatment, if you can even call it that is so dangerous, many states here in the US have banned it. This is a clinical approach that relies on kids, some as young as 9 or even younger, making decisions they can't possibly understand. If Helen's right, waiting might cause discomfort. But if she's wrong, kids are going to lose fertility, sexual function, and healthy body parts that they can never get back. And in medicine, when the evidence is weak, when the risks are permanent, when the patient is a child, we don't push forward, we slow down. So this interview isn't about politics. It's about protecting kids from irreversible harm. And until the science is solid, until the evidence is strong in any facet, kids always deserve our protection, especially on this issue, not experimentation at the hands of profiteers. As always, do the right thing, let God lead you, fight the good fight, and I'll see you next time.